Welcome y bienvenidos to another episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. I am here with our very first featured voice of 2024, and I am so excited to introduce you to them. But first, I want to say thank you to each of you for showing up for yourselves. I want to thank each of you for your subscribership, for anybody who's been sharing. Even if there's just one episode that causes you to pause and reflect on something about your life, we've reached our mission and we're excited about that. So thank you all so much for being on the journey with us as we grow and we continue to learn about ourselves. We continue to learn about others, and most of all, get compassionately curious about this little journey we call life. So as always, with our featured voices, this guest is no different. Many of my guests, I try to lay this out for you all, especially if this is your first time here. Monthly, we do an extended interview episode where we sit at our virtual podcast table, and I get to sit in space with industry thought leaders, authors, speakers, just people doing incredible things in their respective industries, but essentially go back to the heart of some core questions about what makes us tick and what makes us who we deeply are. And also understanding behind those professionals that we see, including myself, including my guest, we're also human, very human. And we're all learning together. So I'm glad to be here. I'm going to start off this episode no differently than any other one, which is I like to introduce guests by giving them their flowers. Many of my guests I might have known decades. Some I've only known a few years. This guest is extra special, though. Not only, I have an announcement at the end, so make sure you wait till the end because she's also part of the Educator Aid Network in a way. So I have an exciting announcement about her and that, but that'll come towards the end. I met her through my sister, who served in the healthcare sector for almost 20 years. And we actually met probably during the pandemic, I think. And it was one of those connections that I'm just like, her, we're very similar. Even though we've had different lived experiences and different professional experiences, one of the very first things I noticed about you was there's two things: your courage to share the truth about who you are and some of the things you've had to experience in life that have not been so kind and have been somewhat unforgiving, but also that ability to continue to stay steadfast and resilient. Every time I've spoken to you, I see you being number one, a mother, and pouring into your daughters in these powerful ways that I just go, my God, how did she go through so many things and she was still able to do all of this as a mother and raise her children? So I wanted to tell you those things and give you your flowers. That those are the things that first and foremost kind of hit me in the face, outside of both of us kind of being like, oh, did you build a course in 20 minutes? Oh, like the brain stuff. Personally, those are the things I'm like, it gave me hope because of some of the things that I've been through. It actually gave me a lot of hope to see a good model of like, yeah, Justine, this is how you don't stay in victim mentality. This is how you continue to work through and still hold precious beliefs, even if others have weaponized those beliefs against you. So I wanted to tell you all that because this interview has been a long time coming, and I don't think that we celebrate one another enough just in professional spaces for when people are also willing to share some very intimate personal stories about their experiences. So I wanted to thank you, but also say, welcome, Cortney. Oh, welcome, Cortney. I'm going to let you do all of your professional intro because I know I would botch it. Partly because you have such a big footprint in your industry and the specific niche of everything that you do in healthcare. So go ahead and share what you want to professionally. We'll bring it back around because I have some specific questions, but tell the people.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I knew because I listened to your podcast that you offer flowers. I expected to be something funny because I feel like we giggle nonstop when we're together. I didn't expect to get all teary-eyed like, oh, so thank you.
Yeah, you're hilarious too. But those were my first things of why I went, wow, she's a peer
Mhm.
that I need to be around her. Like, yeah.
Well, thanks. I will say, like, my kids are my greatest joy of my life. I have two girls, 15 and 11. And one thing that I think about a lot is I read a quote, and so much, like, we both do so much professionally, but somebody said your greatest contribution to the world may not be what you do, but who you raise and the things
Ooh.
that they do. And I'm like, ooh, like
Ooh.
I feel like I do a lot, but then I think the values and the work ethics and just the kindness that I instilled to my children, like I hope that they take that and they grow up and change the world. So
Well, that's part of legacy, right? That's
yeah.
that's legacy right there. And sometimes I think you're exactly right. I know I do. I get caught up on these things that are they really going to contribute to legacy? It's a big question. Talk us through a little bit of what your career has looked like. So before we jump
Okay.
into more the person behind all the success, what what is your career path look like? And for people to understand, we've had some finance people, nonprofit executives, superintendents, authors, etc. I think you are also our first exclusive representing the healthcare industry
Okay.
interview.
Um, so my background is surgical technology. So I am a certified surgical technologist. The professional organization there is AST, or Association of Surgical Technology. I've done
Okay.
that for 8 years. People don't realize when you go into the operating room and you have surgery, the people think, oh, it's a scrub nurse, or oh, it's a nurse that's in there helping the surgeon. And it's not. The
Mm.
nurse is actually circulating the operating room, and they're helping with patient, they're helping with anesthesia, but there is a specially trained certified surgical tech, or we a CST, that works with the surgeon. So it is a 2-year associate's degree, and it is entire classes in sterile technique and instrumentation and suture and medication and procedures. And we are responsible for all of the instrumentation, making sure, hey, these are clean, these are sterile, you're not going to get an infection. So we're the ones that are passing all the instruments back and forth. We're responsible for making sure however many sponges we start with, that's how many we're ending with. And we have all of our needles, and we have all of our, everything that we've used. So it's a very specialized, it's a special career. I think one that's very underrepresented, one that doesn't get a lot of recognition. We refer to ourselves as the silent heroes in the OR, because we're the ones there with the surgeon. I mean, if something's bleeding, we got our finger on it. If a patient is coding, we're the first ones to jump up there and start CPR. And it's just somebody people don't know exists.
Well, this is where I have to, listeners, I tell on myself like every week on this podcast. But I'll be honest with you, and I hope I know you won't get offended when I say this, but to prove and validate what you're saying, until I met you, I would have never even heard of that as a job title. Like, that's why also I was hesitant of like, I'm going to let her introduce her official title and how she wants to be introduced. Cause I have never even met anybody else with your title in my life. I've never met a professional, and look, I'm into a lot of professional networking stuff. I'm not a person who isn't well connected. And I've been in medical spaces just for family, for myself, like any person probably. I've never met somebody with your job.
Outside of the United States, because I know there are a lot of other countries that watch this,
Yeah.
a lot of other countries will have nurses that are specialty trained in
Okay.
surgery. So
Okay.
they are scrub nurses. And even in the United States, there are nurses who will get an additional certificate, or maybe they were a surgical tech before they became a nurse, and they keep both credentials. But in the United States, we have,
Oh, cool.
I mean, over 100,000, 130,000 surgical techs. We have probably 53, 54, don't don't quote me, 54,000 who are certified. We have to take a national board exam. Like
Okay.
23, 24 states require certification before you can practice
Okay.
in that state. We have continuing education requirements. I
Yeah.
mean, certification requirements. It's a big deal. I think
It
people
is a
just
big deal.
we just don't know that we exist.
Well, in
um,
that layer too, like how many people go again, having my own stuff in my life and family members, how many times you go into surgery or you go to visit somebody after they've had it and you don't even know. But also to put in perspective, viewers and listeners, whether you're based in the US or otherwise, think of it this way. And many of us, especially if we have the ability to listen to a podcast or watch it, we probably have access to watch TV. To put in perspective, one of the stories that stands out to me that I heard from you, one of our first conversations, and it put it in perspective for me about how specialized it really is and how lacking the knowledge is, including my own, about this specific role and just the high stakes that it is. If you ever watched, like, I'm trying to think, like Chicago Med, the
Grey's
medical
Anatomy.
shows, Grey's Anatomy, like any of the medical shows, to be honest, like even the crime shows, right? With the different analysts and stuff. So Courtney's role, literally, you told me a story. You're the one flying across the country in an airplane with a heart in a cooler. That's the role. So people can visualize and understand, because outside of never hearing that title, I hadn't met somebody who, like, you're an in real life person. These people really exist. It's not this drama thing for movies of like, stat, get in the plane. No, Courtney's the person doing that. So do you want
The English
yeah,
cooler.
she has the heart in the cooler. Like,
Yeah,
this person's life depends on her. So
I
what talk to us a little bit if you want to tell that story, or like just the pressure and how that is yin and yang, to have such a
yeah.
high pressure role, but then in the same token be so invisible in an industry where you're so vital.
Yeah, it's a very thankless job, but it's one that is so rewarding. I had the pleasure of scrubbing on two different cardiothoracic teams for 11 years. So we did open heart procedures, any kind of lung procedures, and there's additional training you can get to become a first assistant. So that's the person that's directly helping the surgeon. Like you said, I worked on a heart transplant team for 8 years. That's the coolest thing I've ever done. So I
Yes.
literally, the girl with the igloo cooler and the duffel bag running through the airport. It was a lot of call. It was a lot of hours, but I would fly with the surgeon. We'd go across the country, get in there. And when you're having someone donate their organs, there are a lot of teams in there. So there's the heart team and the lung team and the kidney team and,
Okay.
people that are taking other things, but they're all waiting on the heart guy. So I always I kind of loved it when we would step into this room full of 30 people and the surgeon's like, my girl needs to come in here and help me. And I'm like, that's me. so so we would it's a good feeling.
Yeah.
So we would get in there, we would clamp, we would remove the heart, pack it on ice, and then hop back in the helicopter, the jet, fly back to where I'm from in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would hold the heart as the surgeon sewed it into the recipient, the patient who's receiving the new heart. And then we would stand there when we were finished, and you have to shock them to get that new heart started.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of stand there and you wait. And then once you see that heart beating, it's just like you're teary eyed because someone has life again
It's
and
amazing.
someone got that. And it was rewarding.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, unfortunately, there's not always good outcomes in surgery,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but the things that I saw and the lives that were changed, and it was really awesome to be a part of it. And you talked about being high stress. It's very high stress, especially on, you think trauma surgery or you think open heart surgery or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It's sometimes things go wrong and you have to be able to be level headed and think through what comes next. Because I worked with a group of 6 surgeons, and they know their way of doing it. They know their procedure. They're going to use this clamp and this suture and this. But as a surgical tech, I have to know how all of them do it. And we have these really large tables, these back tables that have, 4 or 5, sometimes 12 instrument trays. I have to know every single instrument, I have to know what it does. I have to know the procedure. I have to know what comes next, because sometimes the surgeon will just stick his hand out or her hand
Yeah.
out, and you just have to keep them going. And so I've got this in this hand, and I know this is coming next, and so I'm working with them. And there's times they're like, well, I don't want that. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You're like,
I
yes,
think
you do.
Well, I think what you're saying is also really, really important, and we'll come back to it. It'll come back up at the end again, you all. But one of the things that I've been able to be alongside Cortney in the entrepreneurship journey. And so one of the things that stands out to me about everything you said is, if you're a person listening and you have a wondering, even if you're not in healthcare, but you've wondered, do my skills transfer? One of the things that you've named, honestly, that's the same skill set I've had to have to be a successful consultant. So one aspect of, being an entrepreneur is maybe you do some consulting work, which I know you have many ventures that you'll talk about too in that lens, and you are an entrepreneur. One of the things I want to put out there to people is sometimes we discount our wealth of work experiences in a professional setting, but exactly what you named, every client I work with, whether they're corporate, school district, or nonprofit, I have to be aware of their strategic plan, their strategic goals, how their board operates, everything they do. There is nothing that is going to be the same as far as my comprehensive knowledge I have to have. I have also realized that's usually the thing that actually kicks entrepreneurs in the tail, that they're not able to see that. It isn't necessarily the things that you and I might talk about of like, oh, I'm so all over the place with these ideas and I'm creating so fast, I can't keep up with it. And we think, oh, well, if I don't do this right, I won't build this right. No, it's that not realizing exactly what you named is almost a more specialized skill in some respects than some of these other roles, because you have to have the ability to get on the balcony and the dance floor. The surgeon and the nurses are often on the dance floor, right there in the action on the front lines. You're that, but you have to get up here and see it all too.
Yeah.
So that's the same skill set I see that effective consultants need, effective leaders need. And I see the ineffectiveness happen more often when people don't realize, well, Cortney not only has the technical skill and the technical knowledge, she has wisdom of experience. And on top of it, that particular role is you have to not only know the plays, you got to know the whole freaking game, like game book and playbook. What has that felt like? And what do you see? What are the reasons, I guess, just so people are aware of the industry? And then we're gonna go back in time a little bit and get to know more personal sides of Cortney too. But would you have any advice? So if people are perking up and going, oh, there's underrepresentation and there's a need, and this is a great industry, what are the things that you had to develop over time to learn that? Because that, even just the fact that you're a mother as well, and you've been doing all of this for almost 20 years, what got you to a place where you started realizing, oh, yeah, no, I actually have to be more comprehensively knowledgeable than a lot of people in here. And that is my responsibility. What would you have any warnings for people, or like, hey, be aware of this, or this was a cautionary lesson I learned? Because that's a lot to manage, Cortney.
Yeah, it is.
Literally.
I think some key things that I learned that have later applied to businesses and different ventures that I've done later is recognizing everyone is an expert in something. So when example, when it was the pandemic and COVID, and they were teaching people, well, you have to don your PPE, your personal protective equipment, and you have to put it on a certain way, and then you have to take it off a certain way. And they're like, how do we train all these people? And we're like, well, there are people who are certified in sterile technique. Like, okay, so we're not doing elective surgeries right now. Recognizing everybody's an expert at something.
Yeah.
And then finding, what is it that I'm good at? Well, I know I'm good at sterile technique. So I've utilized that in medical assisting classes. And I would go up to nursing floors and show people like how to set up different sterile procedures. Or, especially being in trauma where it's chaos all the time, and just being able to okay, forget that the world is burning around me and I have to focus on
Right.
one task and get this done. It's kind of like Denzel Washington in The Equalizer, where like things are happening and then you see
Mm-hmm.
him. He's like, okay, I can do this, and then I can do
Mm-hmm.
this, and then I can do this. But then it's like all happening around him. But
Yep.
like I have the ability to tune out the noise and focus. Okay, these are the things that I'm doing.
Yep.
Um, I mean, that comes into play. I think organization is huge. I realized, wow, surgical techs, we're really good at organizing things. We're really good at counting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Different things like that. We're really good at speaking up because you're the patient advocate. You have to speak up when something's not going right. It is okay for you to say, no, I think that's incorrect, or
Yeah.
no, I think that's wrong. So finding your voice. I think the operating room is no place for somebody who is meek and quiet.
Yeah.
You have to recognize you're a patient advocate just as much as the doctor or the
Well, and
nurse.
this person's life could literally depend on you. So,
Yeah,
to your
I mean,
point, there's
yeah,
no beauty in you saying, "Oh, I don't want to say anything to the surgeon and offend them."
think I put the wrong label on that
Yeah,
medication.
no,
Oh, you
no.
have to speak up.
Did,
Yeah,
did we drop a tool? Right.
maybe they won't
Right,
notice.
right. We've all seen those specials where people are like, "I had something in me."
No, and
Yeah,
unfortunately that happens. But no,
yeah.
you have to do. It's a huge responsibility. I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it just so people could be aware because I could see people hear this and go, "Oh, I need to look into a career." To
no,
understand what skill
a great
sets you
career.
saw, yeah, that you
Yeah,
saw that were helpful. Because sometimes we hear that and we think, oh, this is underrepresented or this is a good paying career. And we don't count the cost then of what's actually required. Like for a person like me, no, that would be pure hell because I would be too emotionally like, well, what's this person's story? And I wouldn't do well with that because I wouldn't be able to separate that emotional. And on top of it, I've just always been queasy over blood in hospitals.
yeah, you wouldn't do well.
Yeah, right. So that's why I look at the roles specifically in healthcare in a lot of awe because that is not, oof. Now, did I deal with throw up and boogers and crap and everything in elementary school? Of course, school shootings, sure.
I have to tell
There's
you, I
something
can't deal with.
different. Like I don't know what that is, and I'm just being very honest because I've had these realizations over time that I think when it is that human factor for me, I can't separate that kind of almost like nurturing. I can go into that mode exactly what you're describing. Like I've done whole lockdowns and all types of stuff I've been through. It's just then on the backside of that, I think it's when the life or death thing is right there.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could sleep well then and not personalize, even though I know you have to. I think I would still live with like some type of weird guilt, even though it's not your fault. It's just yeah. Anyways, it's okay. So one of the things I do want to tell viewers and listeners, and this is one of the cool things about how we met and some of our first conversations is talking through a little bit. We always try to tap into people's cultural origin story. So to make sure everybody has common language here at the podcast, culture, when we're talking about it, can be any number of our norms, our values, our beliefs, the language we use, how we like to spend time with people, our personality. There's a lot of things that can drive our culture and how that shows up. And so much of that is also dictated on our origin story. So the families we're born into, the experiences we live in life, and all of that. Beliefs are something that you and I have connected a lot about. And if you've listened to this podcast or followed me on social media, or even if this is your first time, one thing about me, if you don't know already, many do know this, but I grew up in a bicultural home, father Puerto Rican background, my mother was Amish Mennonite background. The third culture kid term that sometimes you all hear me say on this podcast and online has to do with somebody who then has a new culture created from that because you're creating your own, you have this bicultural home, etc. On top of that, we also were in a very conservative evangelical Christian and Baptist home. So evangelical Christianity and Baptist Christianity for a reference from a worldview. And that is prevalent in the United States. It's very baked into our country. in general. Excuse me. But I'm putting that out there because some of the questions I'm getting ready to ask Cortney, it might take a different direction than maybe what some of you are used to, although many of you have listened and we go very deep with our guests. So who knows what will come up. But one of the things that kind of bonded me very quickly with Cortney was having been through some circumstances in my own life of going through a deconstruction process of my own belief system, of understanding me, knowing that I had been through some pretty rough things as a result of beliefs that I held, even about myself, about how I examine my view of God and creation in general and the universe. But I want to put this all out there under this umbrella that I hope, whether you're listening and you identify as male, female, non-binary, no matter who you are gender-wise, one of the things I want us to think about is in the professional setting, what I do like to highlight here is we all have these completely other worlds and parts of who we are that sometimes they're going to show up in the workplace no matter what, but our colleagues actually don't have any clue of the level of trauma and things that we've been through. And I think this is common for most people. And that's because we don't want to share our junk with just anybody. If it doesn't seem appropriate or like it's going to be beneficial in the workplace, why say it, right? But one of the things I've found over time is that as we pick and choose maybe what we're comfortable with sharing, it helps people better understand how we're wired and maybe why we have the responses that we have. All of that to say, one of the commonalities was that we had both, I'm going to put it this way, we had both survived very rigid upbringings, and not because we didn't have loving elements from our parents, but because by nature, when you are in religious systems, even if they're not Christianity, that are very oppressive, specifically to women, then you internalize a lot of that. And one of the things we bonded over is the fact that even as my career was taking off and I was a young instructional leader, coach, teacher, working in turnaround schools in a large public system, behind the scenes of that, I was living a hell. And I did not tell anyone for years and years and years. Most people never even knew that I had been engaged, let alone called off my wedding 3 days before it. Like, this is in the midst of when I'm supposed to be like, oh, I'm rocketing my career, right? I put this out there because you shared a lot of things very openly with me that helped me also understand, like, you don't have to be ashamed of decisions you've made, Justine. So one of the questions I have, I guess, is cultural origin story. Talk us through how you grew up and then what you've learned about your beliefs over time and how that's aided even personally. I know you've had your own encounters with different traumas in your life. And yeah, so if you need more guidance from me, that's fine. I just don't, I'll see what you come out with because I know we just kind of banter in general. I lead with sharing vulnerably for our audience though, because I don't know if I've ever shared that particular detail here, but I put it out there honestly as just sometimes we literally have no clue what our colleagues are going through, and the type of even mental internal hell that's been created from years of religious programming. So talk to us a little bit about how little Cortney grew up, and then how did that guide some of your adult experiences, specifically belief system, because we both have a pretty hyper religious background.
Yeah. So I won't say the organization, but it was a very conservative evangelical space.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was good. I don't think growing up, and I didn't know anything different. I was like 5 generations into this religion, and my parents loved me. I don't have one bad thing to say about my childhood. Like, we were happy. I'm the oldest of 4. My mom stayed at home with us. Like, we had amazing vacations, and like, it was a really good childhood. And I've always felt loved from my parents and supported. And they didn't have a lot of money growing up, but we didn't know that. I think I recognize that now as an adult, like, oh, like, there's some things that I have figured out over the years.
Oh, that's what they were doing.
And I'm like, oh, okay. But we didn't know that as kids. We thought we were like the richest kids ever, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so it was great. As far as religion goes, it was, like I said, super conservative. We were there multiple times a week. We were involved and go to church camp and Bible quizzing where we
Yep.
would memorize like whole books of the
Yep.
Bible. And
Oh yeah.
it wasn't a bad experience. I think it really got to me when I started raising my girls. And I'm
Mm.
thinking, because there were certain um, dress standards, like I wasn't allowed to cut my hair, I never wore pants, I never wore jewelry, so things like that. So then, as I have my own kids, and I'm like, well, it's kind of cold outside. Like, I don't really want to put a dress on my girl today. Like, it's kind of cold, or like
Just
my
practical life stuff.
and I don't look down on anybody for doing those things. I just don't want to do those things, and I don't believe that those things are necessary for me. And I think I questioned it when my oldest had a friend at 3 years old in ballet who had cancer, and she
Mm.
wore wigs and she wore hats to ballet class, and my little girl obviously had really long hair because we didn't cut it. And she said, Mom, I'd really like to give my hair to make wigs for other friends that don't have cancer.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm like, we're not allowed to,
Oh,
but then how do you explain to your
yeah.
3 year old, like, well, you can't cut your hair?
Actually, this is just legalistic jargon.
Like, you're going to go
Yeah.
to hell, but let your friend be bald. Like, she's 3. And so
Mm.
I was like, okay, so obviously being, the submissive wife, I had to talk to my husband about it. So get his permission, and she donated it, but then there was like an 8-inch requirement and she only had like 6.5 inches, but
Oh,
I didn't have the heart to tell her that. So then I just donated all my
yeah.
hair as well. But
Oh,
then like the next
wow.
week we walk into like my family function and everyone's like,
Wow. So was
yeah,
would you consider that kind of the start of you questioning more heavily, like, hey, I need to examine maybe what are these beliefs really doing? And
yeah.
are they something, I love the way you said that too. It's not necessary for you. It's not something that you feel necessarily connects you deeply with the creator.
And as me as an adult, even as a teenager, as an adult, I followed the rules. I did it. I didn't think
Yeah.
anything of it.
Same.
But then I have this little girl, and she's like, "Well, can I paint my fingernails?" And I'm like, No, we're not allowed to paint our fingernails." And she goes, "Well, why not? You just painted my toenails." And I thought, that's because I could put socks on and hide them. And I thought, oh my God, like, what am I teaching her? Like, I'm teaching her that it's okay,
I'm
but let's hide it so nobody
yeah,
knows.
I'm
So, like,
teaching her that things that feel good to her and that she enjoys need to be hidden.
yes. Yes.
Mm.
So I think it was that moment I thought, oh my gosh, what am I teaching her? To do it and hide it? And I said, you know what? If you want to paint them, let's paint them. So it was just kind of little things like that. And I thought, how am I going to raise my children? If I have these legalistic, standards and traditions and things that I'm doing, you could tell me to wear, long sleeves and a turtleneck every day. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But if I
Right,
can't
right.
explain it to a 3 year old,
Then
and
what
it doesn't make any
what are we
sense,
doing?
and I'm like, then why am I doing this? So I
Yeah.
think that was kind of the moment when I
Okay.
when I started questioning things. And then I looked at my husband one day and I just said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I
Mm.
I can't do it. And then it was, we talked about deconstruction. It was this whole breaking down everything I know, because I felt like, okay, we're saved, we're going to heaven. But then I look at 175 other churches in town. Why do I think they're not going to heaven? We're all reading the same book. We're all talking to the same God. Like, there's got to be something. And I realized, is this like one person's version and another person's version? So it was kind of breaking all that down and realizing, what do I truly care about? And so I feel like the great commandment, Christ said, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And so now I've raised my kids. I said, I want you to love God, whoever that is to you, God, universe, creator, whatever. Love God and love people. Be kind to people.
Yeah.
And you can figure out the rest for yourself.
Right.
Like,
Right. If I examine, it's this simple thing, and I'll give this strategy for listeners and viewers. Very simple thing when it comes to even like evaluating your beliefs from a cultural standpoint. Just start to ask yourself exactly what Cortney just painted a picture of as a parent, which is, if I'm struggling with this, why do I believe it? What meaning does it hold in my life? And is my belief helping or harming myself and or any other humans? Because one of the things I think that we're living this era, right? We're going into a new year, but also I think we're really at an end road, so to speak, with humanity of, we're deciding what are those traditions to hold on to. And I don't think this is just United States. And especially if you're a person who studies astrology, which I am an astrology nerd, these are patterns that are like repeated through time in human civilization. And we have these different pivotal moments over time to correct, so to speak, course correct as humanity and go, are we going to stay in the same cycle, or are we going to create a new spiral and evolve in how we view humanity's beliefs and how we view God or our power, the higher power that guides us, to your point. And I think we've so long as humans been caught up on the nuances of interpreting language, interpreting biblical and or scripture-based text, whether it's the Torah or the Quran, any religious text or spirit-based text. I also started asking, just so viewers and listeners know this, because I am a dog mom. I'm not a mother of humans. And for me, that started coming into play being a teacher, even early on, because you're starting to be met with, what do I believe about behavior management with students? What do I believe about how I was disciplined and how kids should be disciplined? And it's the same thing, especially still working in the K-12 sector, that I run into a lot. When people think they need these big efforts, I would contend maybe the same is true in healthcare or any other industry. They think they need these big programs or initiatives of like, we need to combat this. That can be true because our systems are very, like, they're not set up for everybody. That's the reality in our current cultural state, and that's in many countries around the world, because people are realizing, waking up to go, oh, this was completely set around men, it's patriarchal, or oh, this was completely designed around white people, this is very white supremacist underneath it, right? Or colonized or whatever. People are realizing that. But then I think one of the things I respect a lot about you is you have a way of still lovingly speaking about it. Is something I strive to continue to get better at. I can be good at identifying and naming the harm, but I also, that grace to still go. And I'll put an example. Say that you're a Muslim, but you also know, but I'm not extreme, right? Like you're already differentiating. Just like for Christians, you might go, yeah, but I'm not Amish, but I'm not this, right? Like these specific things. And really, what we're still doing is replicating the fact that we think we can somehow judge or be God's little assistant, and that the creator somehow needs our help to do that.
Yeah.
So like that's been for me, it started with kind of like children, and then going, but wait, if I believe this, then that means that I think exactly what you said. That means that I think there's a better way, or my way is more right, or.
It's almost like non-denominational has become its own domination. Right. And I realize at the end of the day, at the end of my life, I have to stand before the creator and say, here's what I did. I did my best. And that's it. Nobody else gets to check a box for me. Nobody else has to answer for me. I answer to myself. And I feel like until my kids are old enough where they can choose things for themselves, which I mean, now they are, like, and then I would have to answer for them. But I don't, I've had to tell people, well, when judgment day comes, I'm glad you only have to speak for yourself. I'll answer for me. Thanks.
You have such grace. I can just see you're getting questioned by a family member or something. You're like, well, but look, this is our struggles, at least in the US. I'd love to hear other people like weigh in with our voice comments and stuff if you can. But I'm so curious because I shouldn't say that. I mean, you've traveled a decent amount. And when you talk with people from other regions, do you notice similar tendencies? Because I do know from talking with whether I have friends that are part of different religious traditions, whether they're agnostic or atheist, we are seeing these common patterns. So even if it's not through the realm of religion, even though that's something that has been a big part of both you and I's journey, for some people that might show up as going, yeah, I don't want to work in an organization that is hierarchical and run like a dictatorship. I want a shared leadership model, right? Like I think that is pretty consistent right now with people going, oh, wait, no, we don't have to always go on site to work. We can work virtually, even when it's not a pandemic. Like I see that happening even outside of like, I guess, belief systems and religious structures. But
So, okay, let me say this.
are
You'll
you
like
seeing
this.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think people will say, okay, oh, these millennials, oh, like, they don't want to work 9 to 5, and oh, they don't want to go to church,
No,
and
we
everyone's
don't.
falling away from God, and blah, blah, blah. But I feel like I am now closer to God than I was in that space because I took all the stuff away. And now it's
100%.
just me and him. And I heard someone say, maybe this is the revival that our parents prayed for. It just doesn't look like they thought it was,
Mm.
because we are doing our own thing, and I am closer to God, and I do have a better relationship. It's different than what
Well,
someone would
very
have hoped.
different. My whole perspective and perception of who and what the nature of the love of God is has drastically shifted because all growing up, just the nature of legalism, whether you are, again, whether you are Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, whatever, all of it can quickly turn into the paradigm of control and basically just the inputs of like what you're saying, arbitrary rules. That doesn't bring you any closer to God. That actually separates you from God, in my opinion.
It's
And
putting so many
now,
layers.
yeah, to your point, now would I trade that foundation? No, because like, yeah, I also grew up memorizing Bible verses. I know how to analyze commentary in a Bible. Like those
Right?
things were invaluable to me. Like, and that is how I met God. I met God through that. And it was painted in a way that for many, many years, and I have had to do and still have to do a lot of conscious reprogramming, was envisioning that any misstep, God was just waiting to strike me down with lightning.
Yes.
So because so many religions are built around fear base,
Mhm.
it's then it sets us apart more from even understanding the love, the unconditional love that humanity can have, because we're made in the image of God. So if we're made in the image of God and God is a perfect unconditional love, that's part of who we are. And we need
Right.
to freaking love ourselves and get to know ourselves and who God made us to be. So even if you're hearing and you're triggered and you're like, but I'm an atheist, I'm unsubscribing, it's okay. You don't even have to agree with either of us. That's the era I think we're coming into, where it's like, no, I don't need to worry about how you feel or your salvation or if you believe in God or not. I want to see though that you're happy, healthy, and thriving as a human.
Mhm.
I want to see that you have joy as a human. I want to see that you have the tools to regulate emotions and work through tough things as a human. But to your point, we're not responsible for other people. And I think that's painted what colonization and supremacy rule and empire are all about. And that is a commonality that I think anybody around the globe we can
I
really.
think how I treat people, how I speak to people, how I love people, you serve others, that speaks more volumes than me being like, you need to come to my church. Like,
That's
it's
right.
how
Or
you love
here, read this pamphlet on if you're going to hell or not. Okay, let me shift this a little bit, partly because I know we're running a little bit on time. I don't know your schedule, and I want to make.
We could do this forever.
I know we could. You all could what? This will be our first 24-hour episode. No, they're like, yeah, no, we're never watching this again. one of the curious questions I had, because it'll lend itself to this next question about your inner child. And then I'm going to go with a couple of quick questions. I want to hear what you're working on, what you're putting out. We have our special announcement. And then I want to ask you some of your most frequently asked questions that you get as a speaker, as a teacher in your own field, and as a person who's expert in their current role as well. You have a lot of different entrepreneurial efforts you've also been very successful at over the years. One of the questions, though, that I like to know from every guest we have here is something about a key principle in your life. So when you think of little Cortney, when you were 10 or under, I want you to be thinking through a principle that was consistent, and you think back and you go, yeah, that to my core is still a principle that I live by. Even if it became a little bit shaded for a time period or you got away from it, if you really examine who you are, this is ultimately, right? This is a principle you can go back to. I'm looking at one of my notes here, and this is what I wanted to wrap it up in, because I wanted to give a structure and give some knowledge to the listeners too. I was listening to a talk recently, and the guest on this podcast, I believe it was on Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. That's a pretty big one. If you guys don't watch, it's one of my favorites. But he examined some pretty interesting guests. They've had some 2.5 hour episodes. I do watch them. I have to break them up, but I watch them. So this guest, though, was saying the commonality, right? The common thread that binds us across all of humanity and actually does transcend religion, race, gender, all of the made up constructs that we've created to try to categorize humans on Earth. Humans in general have made up those things. The 7 issues, she said, that all humans must confront and that all humans experience. It might be on to different degrees and different things, but essentially we all have to confront these things. And so I want to put this out there not only as a teaching point, but then hopefully, I know no matter what your principle is that you go back to with little Cortney, I think it will tap into maybe even overcoming or confronting a few of these issues on the list. Those 7 issues, you might want to pause it and get something to write down if you're listening, or bookmark it if you're listening on Audible. I know there's that feature too. Control, trust, manipulation, safety, security, approval, and abandonment. Those are the 7. I'll run through them one more time, but just for you all to have a little additional nugget. And it's something I've been pondering too as part of my research around culture and for my dissertation is what are the things that bind us, even if there's tragedy, even if there's trauma, even if there's grief, that essentially, even if it's on this end of the spectrum or it's massive and it's on this end of the spectrum, this is what we have in common. This is what we're met with to try to overcome together in the human experience. Control, trust, manipulation, safety, security, approval, and abandonment. It's also underneath why I think it's so important to unpack those elements of culture, like beliefs, how we speak, our language, norms, values, everything, because it paints a picture of how we view those things. And it paints the picture of how we process those things and confront them. So when all of those things, that is humanity's core wound. And that is, it takes us away from our connection to God, source, creator, the universe. So those 7 things, when I was taught growing up, I don't know about you, about the 7 deadly sins. Oh. Then when I unpacked that next to this, I'm like, oh, okay, say that you take gluttony. I struggle with overeating. I'm an emotional eater. So say you take
love sugar.
Say that you take gluttony. If you took a 7 deadly sin like gluttony, what would that go back to on the 7 issues all humans must confront? It'd go back to control. It would go back to why you're probably being gluttonous, which is manipulation, or somebody manipulated you, or trust. They broke the trust. It makes you feel safe and secure. It helps with approval and abandonment because food never abandons you or seeks
never fails me.
No, so when I heard this, that's why I've been pondering it for weeks. I wrote it down. I went back and listened. I'm like, wow. So if we can just figure out no.
Start our own Bible study on that right there.
Yes. Well, hey, coming soon.
Write a book.
Cortney and Justine's ways to overcome 7 humanity wounds. No. So think back to little you, because maybe this will make it even more tangible for people of like, that seems overwhelming when we lay it out that way. But then to even go and do the legwork of like, oh, because those are a manifestation of even one deadly sin like gluttony. What did we just do? It could be rationalized that it causes all 7 of those things, or those 7 things cause the gluttony. Like, so you start to see the cause and effect. So strategy wise, let's go back to little Cortney. What's a principle that it's like, yep, that was me. Yep, that's still me.
Okay, well, first of all, she's hilarious and a lot of fun. She I'm quite the ham. I go back and I watch like family videos, and like anytime there's a camera, I'm like, hey, I'm like, hi. So not shy. I would say, and I have been thinking about this because I knew this one was coming. The principle that I have lived my life by, and kind of like my motto or my mantra, it comes from my dad. I am 100% daddy's girl. My dad is like my favorite person in the world. Yep. He would always tell
Pablo,
me,
I gotta give my shout out. Wait, I gotta give a shout out to my dad on the first episode. I love you, Pablo. I love you. My dad, look, real talk, my dad has taught me more lessons about leadership than any person on this earth. So yeah, just need to put that on public record.
My dad is why all 4 of his kids work hard. He is, I'm actually named Bill Jr. because we don't meet a stranger. Like everyone calls me Bill Jr. It's not my real name.
Wow. This is so wild. That is very similar to me and my dad. My dad's like, I call him the mayor of Elkhart. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Okay. So look at my Instagram from yesterday, because I posted a picture of me and my dad in matching shirts, and it's like daddy's girl.
Oh.
Okay. So he would always tell me, if you can't do anything to change it, then don't stress about it. Oh. And so he's like, first of all, like, 90% of the things we worry about don't happen anyway. Yeah. But he would say, if something's happened and we're all worked up, or, something's happening at school, we're stressed about a test, or, something with a friend. And he would say, stop, take a minute, take a second here and ask yourself, can I do anything in this moment right now to change the situation? And if you say no, then why worry about it? Why waste your energy, your time, your mental well-being? Why waste all of that energy stressing about something you can't control? And that's what I teach my kids now. And I feel like that has helped me so much as an adult, because again, my whole world could be on fire. Like I went through a terrible divorce. My 11-year-old has a lot of mental health issues. And there's just all these other things that have happened. And people will say, how are you so happy all the time? And it's funny, because if you do the Clifton Strengths Finders, my number 1 is positivity. And people are like, why are you happy all the time? Like, are you on drugs? No.
Look at how I started the interview and what I noticed about you. Yeah. The resilience.
There's nothing you can do. Like my world has been turned upside down. It has been completely flipped upside down. It's turned out in a way I never thought it would. But I've realized there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just here for the ride. So I'm not going to stress. I'm going to eat a lot of ice cream, because we're emotional eaters, just fine. But I can't do anything to change it. So why stress? So.
And there we go. There it is. That's all the advice we ever need. We're going to close down the podcast. This is going to be last. Yeah, that's it. That's all the wisdom we could ever need. No, but I say that truthfully, because that 7, let's go back through it. Let's see if it holds up. Yeah, it holds up. So the whole theory that you learned from your dad, your principle of little you and still now is, if you can't change it, then don't fixate on it, essentially. Don't stress about it. So how does that help us confront the 7 issues that all humans must confront, or are met with confronting? We don't always all choose to do that, but in our journeys of life: control, trust, manipulation, safety, security, approval, abandonment. Abandonment. I can't control if somebody wants to be with me or not. And why would I want to control that? Right.
If you don't
So,
want to be
like,
here, I don't want you here.
correct. So, again, can't control it. So, why would you stress about it? The same with approval, the same with manipulation, trust, control. Like, control is one of the things. So, he literally gave you a principle that has already helped you confront your whole life as far as a core wound that many humans never figure out how to resolve. We just don't. And it's part of that is because it is really hard. It's really hard to do this work. And I ask multiple times to Cortney and every other guest what they're comfortable with, what they're not. And I send samples because that is a thing I'm realizing now to be aware of too. Even from the context of this podcast platform, Cortney, I've had people just say, no, I don't want to go that deep on a podcast. And that's okay. That's not me judging it. It's a noticing of humanity. We do not like to look in the mirror and have to name the ugliness that exists. And the reality is, and the great late James Baldwin, one of my all-time most favorite writers and activists, etc., he talked specifically about this a lot in his writing, but just that whole idea that the same person you're looking at and despising, you have that same in you. Like we have that thing. That's a hard truth to accept. And that to me is directly related to how we define cultural capacity here and why we're creating new lexicon, because I myself struggle over the years, just like anybody. We want to replicate the things that we think have worked in our life. And sometimes that ends up then trying to push that on other people, such as religion or beliefs, because we feel as though, well, if this is so good, why wouldn't everybody want to drink this Kool-Aid? Well,
And another
I mean,
thing
there's
he would
plenty of
say,
people out in the forest worshiping trees who are deeply connected to the creator, and they don't want any of that Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Like that's the other reality. So why does that matter to you? And why do you think you have to control?
Yeah. The other main thing he said, like following that, was you can't control how other people react. You can't control how other people treat you. You can only control your response. And I think that's what truly got me through my divorce. So I was married for 17 years. We'd been together for 22, and it ended very badly. And I kind of had to make a decision, and I left. And
did part of that, quick question so people are aware too, journey-wise, did part of that go with some realizations about your faith journey and questioning with your daughters and just some core beliefs and core even lifestyle, how you were living your lives? Like, it came from you examining your beliefs. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, 100%. And I stayed longer than I should have because of how I was raised.
Yep.
But then again, I realized I need my girls to know that if you're in this situation and these things are happening, you're allowed to walk away.
Yeah.
You are allowed to stand up for yourself. You are allowed to walk away. And, it was that submissiveness for so long that was ingrained in me. And if something went wrong or something happened, then it wasn't an examination on his part. It was, well, are you doing everything you can to keep a good home? And are you making yourself available to him? And are you
it must be something you need to change.
Yeah. So I spent years, and it's been 4 years, and I still spend time in therapy thinking, gosh, did I do enough? Am I good enough? Like, because number one,
that's what we do. That's what we do.
Sure you're a sinner and you're terrible and you're this horrible person. And then I'm this horrible wife because my husband's doing these things. So then it is now, like, that's probably my biggest struggle is still trying to tell myself, you are enough. You're enough.
And that dissonance, what I hear coming through really quick, through is that dissonance of, my dad taught me this lesson of, I can't control other people's behaviors, but that clashes with then that internalized belief of like, well, I'm not really supposed to buck what my husband says. And if I do, that's going to look poorly on me. So that very thing, even though he was engaging in behaviors that were harmful to you and your daughters and your marriage in general, like, because of that, though, that's where that dissonance comes in, I think, for so many, specifically in marriages and relationships, because you know in your gut what you were taught by your father, even. But then,
Oh, yeah.
even that, there's going to be perceptions from family about what you did or didn't do, not because you want that, not because you welcome it, but because people are human. And they're going to want to ask those questions when there's a breakup or a divorce, etc. But that, I'm just pointing that out to people because I see that happening a lot with people I coach, where they're not seeing the connect of that dissonance and how they might be doing all this work over here to deconstruct something, but then they're living in that same hell and that same cycle. And that's something I've noticed and admire about you from talking with you, because you were able to push against that and go, yeah, but this doesn't measure up and I don't deserve to be treated this way. And honestly, I'm not going to be held accountable for my husband's behaviors. I can't control his reactions.
And people were they were so mean to me. So
Yeah.
I think of my dad saying, you can only control your reaction. And then there was another woman that I knew who kind of helped me. She had been through a divorce like a year before. And she said, let me give you the best advice that someone gave me. At the end of all this, how do you want it to be said that you conducted yourself? And how do you want to be remembered at the end of this journey, that you handled yourself? And I thought, ooh, so I never said one bad word about him. Yep. I never told people what happened. I walked away. We were taking care of his elderly parents, and it was in the middle of the pandemic. So it was easier for me to leave because I couldn't do that to them. I love these people. They're like my second parents. Right. So I walked away, and I didn't tell my kids why. And I remember my kids like yelling at me, like, why did you leave my dad? And my oldest one like wanted nothing to do with me and would cry if she'd have to come see me. And I never told them. I never said a word. And eventually, it's been 4 years. So eventually things came out from other people. But when it came out, I didn't tell them. I didn't say a word. It was, I don't feel like I have to tell my side of the story. God will tell my side of the story.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
And so that at the end of the day, 4 years later, I can say, I'm proud of the way I handled it. I controlled my reaction to the situation. I didn't throw anybody's name out into the mud. Like, I handled it well. And yes, my whole world was burning and people were so mean. It is amazing. People who I thought were friends would say, I just can't believe you would walk out on your family. I pray those girls don't grow up to resent you one day. And I'm like, stay classy, Court, keep your mouth shut.
And I think that's the thing. That's such a huge nugget for people, Cortney, because that is the battle of it. We want to, especially if you've been a victim in any way of abuse, assault, just people cheating, whatever. You want people to believe you. You want people to know, no, this happened. And I tend to be that way, right? Over time, because I didn't know how to advocate myself from the same things you've mentioned of a very religious background. So you learn to keep quiet about stuff. It's when you step into your power and you realize, no, what they did was really wrong. And you want to tell people because you want to feel like you're sharing it. And that's not necessarily bad. I don't even want to label it one way or another because there is no right path. It's whatever's right for you. But I think what you're hitting on is not only so mature, it's just such a nugget of wisdom because it could save people a lot of drama, especially of how they wedge kids into the situations that these are adult relational situations that honestly, to your point, I had something similar in 2023 and other years too as an entrepreneur. And I've even thought maybe this is something you and I need to do like a special workshop on, like boundaries for business owners. But that's where I've seen that come up. And over time, I've learned the same thing because what I put out there, I'm going to attract more of. So if I'm out here being resistant and filing lawsuits, not that sometimes that isn't warranted, but you have to make this decision. And I'm wrapping this up kind of a different way. So people, if they maybe haven't gone through personal trials like you have, maybe it's been professional. And professionally, same thing though. I would tell you from my own experiences, Cortney's theories hold up. So professionally, if you don't want your name dragged through the mud, even if somebody wronged you, even if they stole from you, even if they lied to you, even if they cheated on you, whatever it is, in the professional realm as well, you don't need to do that work of correcting their behavior. So just like I don't need to be like, I can't control people's reactions. I don't need to be out there correcting people's behavior. Now, you might want to hold people accountable by like filing a lawsuit if it's necessary. Myself, where like what you're speaking of, that takes a lot of strength to not let your lips fly when you're met, especially then with that hatred, because that professionally, same thing happens. So I know different people, right? They filed discrimination lawsuits against their employer or something. If you're not tight-lipped and your intention isn't to hold them accountable for the harm they caused you, then yes, you're going to make the mistake of talking to the wrong people, and that isn't going to help anybody, and it's going to attract more resistance and more of that drama and pettiness into your life when you played the long game. Most of us, I think human nature is to play the short game, and I want to fix it and I want to ease the pain by venting about it. You knew that if I stay the course and I only focus on me, it'll take care of itself.
I think the greatest moment was when my oldest came to me and she said, and this was probably 2 years after I left, and she said, I just want you to know that I figured some things out and I know why you did it. And first, I want you to know that I'm really proud of you because I know that you did it for me. And second, I just want to say that I'm sorry for the way I treated you when I didn't understand it. And of course, as a mom, I'm like, but I never, oh, like, but it was just her thanking me for the way your kid is thanking you for the way you've conducted yourself. That says a lot.
Yeah, no, it does. So I think hopefully listeners and viewers, if you've taken away anything from this incredible interview, I'm just very honored to have you as our first guest this year. And we have just a little bit more time that I want to give Cortney the floor to unapologetically tell us what you're working on. So our last segment on this podcast is always called Unapologetically Living Out My Purpose. And this is basically, what are you working on now? Where can we find you? Feel free to plug shamelessly anything you have, any social media you want followed. I'll let them know kind of our announcement after that.
Okay. Well, I'll continue my journey. So I talked about surgical technology and I have kept my credentials. I'm still a certified surgical technologist. For the last 7 years, I've been in an education space. So I became the first non-nursing educator at a large healthcare system. So that's actually how I met Justine's sister, Kara. We were educators together. And people kept saying like, well, you're not a nurse. Like, you can't do this. You can't do this. And I'm like, watch me. Like, I can do that. I can do that. So I just started doing it. And then I realized, and I went back to school for my bachelor's because I realized one day after I'd worked like, a 22-hour shift, and I see the other two ladies that I'm scrubbing with, because on the transplant team, you're working a lot of hours. And so I see these other two ladies who are both in their 60s, and it's like 2 a.m. and we're waiting for a patient, and they're like wrapped in blankets and we're all tired. And I thought, oh God, I don't want to be doing this when I'm their age. So I'm like, well, let's go back to school. So I got a bachelor's degree. And then because of the bachelor's degree, I got the educator job because you had to have a bachelor's in the education job. And then I realized every one of the educators was getting a master's degree. So I'm like, well, I guess I got to get a master's degree now. And I didn't know what I wanted to get. So I picked an MBA. So I got an MBA, and people kept saying, why are you getting a master's in business? You're in health. I don't know, but I got a scholarship and it's free. And one day I'll be glad I had it.
That's right.
So I finished, and I am glad. So I finished the master's degree, and my capstone project was building a surgical simulation department, because I realized as the educator, there were so many hands-on immersive learning experiences that were needed, but I didn't have the time or the resources to do it because I was always doing orientation and onboarding and other things. So somebody told somebody, and next thing you know, I'm sitting in the C-suite and they're like, tell us about this simulation. Like, what's your price tag? Like, how much will it cost for us to build this? So I talked myself into that job, ended up running surgical simulations for an advanced medical simulation lab. And then a couple years later, I ended up building 7 programs there at the sim lab for onboarding. So advanced practice providers, general surgery residents, like all these programs. And then they sent me to Northwestern to get a certificate in mastery learning and simulation.
No biggie. No biggie.
Yeah. And then I'm speaking at all these conferences because they're like, tell us what you're doing, because we don't have surgical technologists in the simulation space because they're simulation techs and they don't have that other background. So I'm speaking at all these conferences. And then in simulation, somebody from a medical device company calls me. So I now work for a medical device company. I work on a design team. So I make shoulder implants for people who are having their shoulder replaced. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm happy with my job. And then they called me a couple months later and they're like, we really want to have a conversation with you. We need somebody who knows business, but who also speaks surgeon.
We've got one person in the United States for that.
Why would a surgical tech? Yeah, exactly. Why would a surgical tech have a master's in business? I don't know. One day I'll be glad I had it. And I'm glad I had it. So I've been there for 2 years now. But before I left the simulation lab, I was still speaking. I was working on some publications. I was speaking at conferences, and I really love instructional design, building curriculum, building courses. So I thought
you and me both.
Oh, right. I was like, oh, I can build that. So I started
hey, you all, if you all know what 2 geriatric millennials do on their Friday nights that are entrepreneurs, this is
building online courses. So I started my own company before I went to this medical device company. So my company is Surgical Tech Educator, LLC. You can find me at www.surgicaltecheducator.com.
Okay. So who is this for and who is this not for?
So this is for, right now, it is for surgical technology educators. So one thing I've realized is surgical technology is a 2-year associate's degree. Educators, and it's now where the educators are getting master's degrees in education. Before, there's this whole wave of education coming there. I mean, you're seeing PhDs, you're seeing masters in education, but for a long time, it wasn't. It was like, hey, you're a really good scrub, you're good at precepting. We're going to need you to, we need help at our local community college.
But just because, let me put this out there, and it's the same phenomenon that happened, and this has to do with what you and I are going to be promoting with Educator Aid, but it has to do with teachers and nurses, so healthcare and education. And I mean K-12, pre-K-12 education in the US. In both systems, there's this phenomena of promoting people and saying, well, you did really good with this. Just because, and I will tell you, this ends up being a lot of the clients that I work with through Educator Aid, and we're seeing you saying this is making a light bulb because it's the gap. And it is, well, you were really good at this set. Well, first of all, if you all noticed what Cortney was just sharing at the beginning of what she's talking about right now, what she denoted was most of the nurses still didn't even realize what she was capable of and still thought she needed a bachelor's to understand what they did. Okay, I'm pointing that out because it shows you back to full circle beginning of this interview how much even in your industry people don't understand. Same thing happens in education. Oh, well, they were an incredible teacher leader. Let's just move them up the ladder to assistant principal and principal. All the while, you're not remembering that person never actually received formalized coaching, training, and feedback and development on leadership. So to your point, okay, they might have been an amazing scrub nurse, but just because you need to push somebody into something, that doesn't mean that they've done all the same things that then Cortney's knowledgeable about. It doesn't mean they know how to design curriculum and instruction. In fact, many don't. And they don't know how to teach. Like I would say you and my sister are an anomaly. But like, no, I'm being honest, I'm biased. I'm showing my bias, but I only am going to point that out so people understand the gap that you found. It is there. and it's there specifically in healthcare and K-12 education. I know it's in other sectors too, but these are our worlds. And in a service industry that is serving humans and literally the lifeblood of future generations, that's problematic that we're still only focusing on either the C-suite roles or the boots on the ground. And then we're missing these in between, because over time it actually hurts our systems more. But I'll get off like the cultural pattern soapbox. I just wanted to point out those through roads because it's exactly what I see happen. And you know why then I'm coaching principals or soups? Well, I've never been trained how to strategic plan. Well, of course you haven't. You were a dynamite science teacher.
Yeah.
Why would you just wake up knowing because they slapped a title on you? You wouldn't. You wouldn't.
Right. So because I'm a good preceptor in surgery and I can help students, like that doesn't necessarily mean I'm a good teacher in the classroom. It means I'm good in the lab. It means I'm good under fire. So really my mission at Surgical Tech Educator is, we know that, so your Mayo stand is that little stand that's next to you with like your immediate instruments. And we say, we know that stepping out from behind the Mayo can be scary, but we are here to give you the tools and equip you to be successful as an educator. So it is me taking all the things I've picked up through the years, because I like to collect, certifications and certificates. So, I have 2 certifications in sterile processing, and I'm a part of the Toastmasters group because I want to be a better public speaker. And I got certified as a DISC workplace facilitator, and I got a Team Steps Master Trainer certificate and like best self culture. People are like, why are you doing all this stuff? Because I'm putting all these things in my toolbox. So then when I can create courses, professional development courses for educators who don't know how to be an educator, hey, let me teach you. Let me do a quick little thing on adult learning theories. You're frustrated with one of your students because you're trying to teach all 20 of them the exact same way, but no one ever taught you there's a difference between a doer and a reflector.
It's the classic, no, it's not that the teacher, it's not that the student doesn't get it. It's that you're not teaching the way that I learn. Like,
but it's getting mad at a student because you're like, well, I told her to do it and she didn't do it.
no.
Well, did you ask her how she learns? Like maybe she's a reflector. Maybe she needs to look at her notes first. Did you give her a second to look at her notes? But those are the things people don't know. Yeah. So it is an educational consulting business. And I'm trying to put together all these tools. I'd really, really like to go down this micro-credential road. Like I want to put together micro-credentials and like these little things that they need to add to their toolbox to become better educators.
I love it. And I'm so excited for you and just excited to know you. I'm really
how I got started.
Yes, please. Okay. Please.
So there are these 2 girls I know, 2 women.
You're missing the opportunity.
Justine and Kara had this program. It was 2 years ago.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
We started testing it 2 years ago. Cortney was our very first beta tester. And then I want to hear you talk about it because I want to hear you just talk authentically about your experiences, but it's just so people understand why we're just now pushing it out for real. I had a few principals and she was our healthcare representation. And we said, we want to give back to teachers and nurses. That's our background. We know this information should be available. So if people want to start a side gig, or even if they don't want to leave their full-time job, but they want to be like the Cortneys of the world and do these different things, then yeah, or like her and I, because me and my sister, even as teachers and nurses, we've done entrepreneur stuff. We're similar to you. And all that to say, we spend time. It's one of the first programs I'm like, I want full testimonials from what a principal thought, what a healthcare industry leader thought. And then it hiccuped in 2022. Our mother passed away in January. So that also then became a back burner program to like our normal client load, which is typically with like Department of Ed clients, like more of those type of contracts. So I put this out there because not only does it take a while to build a decent program, but Cortney speaking from a place of like, now we're actually finally officially launching. I'm excited, but she was one of our first and has been so gracious and given us such great feedback to even enhance everything about it. Talk to us about the Edupreneur Vision Accelerator program and your experiences. Now it's like so whole. Now Courtney might go, I've been waiting to give her critical feedback.
It was awesome. It was, I want to start, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I don't know anything about a business. I mean, how many people have businesses, but they're not real businesses? So it was this course online, an education entrepreneurship class. How do you start your own company? And it was the plans that you guys had laid out. And it was, hey, you have to get on social media. Hey, you have to have some sort of a learning management system. And what I loved was you would show 3 or 4 or 5 of them and be like, here's all the good stuff about them. Here's the things that we found a little quirky. We'll tell you which ones we use, but we want you to find whatever one works best for you. And I loved that because I got out there and I really explored all of them. It was very helpful. I will say, little plug, there's an app available. So I have the app on my phone and I still sometimes go back through it and still rewatch those videos. And it's been 2 years, but it's still me going back, using that resource literally in my pocket. And
I go back to them so I don't forget.
What did I
write? Yeah, no, I appreciate that very, very much. Tell us a little bit about your outcomes though, because this is the teacher and principal in me at heart. This is what I was excited about, was when we talked a couple months ago and you were like, guess how many people signed up?
Okay. So
like, that's actually what fills my cup, is to see other people thrive as a result, not even for me and my sister's purposes or for educator aid purposes. Just, I like to know that I helped somebody in some way.
Okay. So my first course was launched a few months ago, and it is a national board certification exam review course. And I did this, and this really is not for the educators, but I built it for the educators, if that makes sense. So I've been doing my homework over the last 2 years and watching in these Facebook groups with all these surgical tech educators. And I watch them and they're like, hey, does anyone have a thing over here that, you know, you're willing to share? Does anyone have tips over here that you're willing to share? Do you have any tools? So I'm writing all these things down and I built a course around it. Okay, these are the things that you're wanting. This is the course that you're asking for to help your students prepare for the national boards. So I thought, I need to do a beta course. I'm going to post this in the educator group. If I get 3 people to sign up, this is going to be amazing. If I get 10 people, I will be completely over the moon, because I just want their feedback. I want these educators to be in here helping me design it, doing the feedback like every single week, to where, you know, okay, is this what you truly wanted? Is this something? Should I do something different? Should I tweak this? Well, I had this bright idea that I was going to put this coupon code out there, because I thought the course is $111. And I thought, well, I'm going to put this coupon code out in this Facebook group, because if I can get some people to sign up for free, because I realized I have no reputation yet as surgical tech educator. Like, I'm building my brand. So if I do it for free, maybe they'll sign up. And then I told them, in exchange for your feedback and your reviews, I'll give you this code for free. You help me tweak this course, you get it for free. Well, I put this coupon code out there and I thought, okay, I'm going to go run some errands and do whatever. And then my phone is going off, ping, 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 ping. And I thought, and I put in the post, the first 50 people to sign up, you're going to get this free code, join this course, you know, be a part of this big thing. Well, I forgot to turn the coupon code off. And next thing you know, 76 people have signed up in 3 hours. 76 people. And I'm like, I call my dad. I was like, go home and turn this code off. I'm losing money.
And you did no advertising.
No, I just simply.
So I'm pointing this out because even as we're going with this, I'm wondering if we need to break this into 2 episodes. And maybe one half is the more entrepreneurial stuff we're talking about, and the first is more the just professional journey. But I'm saying this because the interesting thing about that, and these are also just my own myths that I've believed from other business coaches I've worked with and stuff over the years, but I kept believing these myths of like, no, but we have to do ad spend. And that you actually taught me something really powerful when we were talking. And you told me 2 months ago when we were talking, you told me this. And Courtney goes to me, Well, Justine, I hung out in the groups and did my research. Oh, oh,
Well,
no. Yeah.
here's another trick. So I ended up with 82 people in the course, like
Yeah.
that all signed up within one day.
Congrats again. I'm so just excited.
So something else, there's another podcast that I love, and she talks about you talked about astrology earlier. So she uses an entrepreneur astrology coach.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who teaches you to do your business around the cycle of the planets. And so she talks about the lunar cycle and how people have that full moon energy. And when you're building up to the full moon, people are like, yes, do something. Because then, as you're going into the new moon, we're kind of relaxed and we're recuperating. So
Yep.
she said, if you're launching a product, you launch it up to a full moon or on the full moon, because people naturally buy and have that energy.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, whatever. So I posted it on a full moon and I had 81 people in 3 hours. So I'm a believer.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
On purpose, I posted a second like free mini course on learning assessment
Okay.
styles,
Okay.
not on a full moon. And I had 5 people.
So this is learning for me too. That's all we do here on this podcast is learn. No, no, but really, because the interesting thing, and that's a good pivot, even that we're making, and I've been making with Educator Aid going into the new year, and as an entrepreneur, past couple years, and Cortney knows that me and my sister are kind of wild about the lunar cycles and stuff and our moon baths.
I want to be just like you.
And but why I did that was actually to get in better touch with myself. Jenna Kutcher, which a lot of us in online spaces know of, she was one of the first kind of blog influencers who started putting out courses. She had previously been a photographer and had shot weddings for people and stuff, but over time she actually did some of that work of dissecting if you're a woman with a menstrual cycle when you create as an entrepreneur. So for me, the past couple of years, I've been calibrating and just working through some emotional things too. Like, when are the best times for me? Like, how should I structure ultimately my calendar of how I'm time blocking energy? Because I know there's certain projects, and you know this too, that we all like, they're going to require more heady brain work. There's other spaces where I need to block out, like, I've got 5 hours on this day that literally just needs to be creative space, to be brainstorming ideas or whiteboarding or whatever. But legitimately, there are certain hormonal cycles where if I'm leading up to this part of my cycle, you're not getting me to do shit. Oh, now I have to mark this as explicit. Okay, sorry. Not
Like,
sorry.
oh,
Not sorry, audience, but
hanging out. It's a new moon.
Yeah, right. So, but now I have also been looking at that. I'll give a hot take though. The only thing I would offer, because I do follow one person in particular, it might even be the same person who does it more for how to attract clients based on the moon cycles, all that kind of stuff. What I use, and I'll turn people onto this because I realized, especially if you are on social media and you get into following some of these accounts that claim to be astrologers, my only caution would be many of them are sharing knowledge that is easily accessible already to exactly what Cortney's naming. You just have to put in the time to, number one, if you're doing what I talked about, which is syncing up your cycles and knowing on your calendaring when you're going to be the most energetic to create projects, to put projects out, whatever. The flip side is then doing what Cortney is looking at, which is, okay, what about the actual products and promotions I have in my company? So outside of myself, and when it's good for me and when it makes sense for me to create and throw things out, all that to say, how I even started looking at that too, as far as decision making and even signing contracts. And again, all of this, just like religion and what we talked about, you could go all in and have it become this very religious, like, well, I only go to grocery shop on a waning moon. Like, it can be like just ridiculous. So just be careful no matter what you do. But the thing is this, go on Amazon and you look up, I think it costs $9 or $10, and they put one out every year. It's also from like the past 200 years, how the Farmer's Almanac was created, because that's all about the tide cycles, the moon cycles. The tide is affected by the moon, blah, blah, blah. this is the same thing that's built on. It's called Llewellyn's Daily Planetary Guide. They've been doing this for over 100 years. They map out the cycles of astrology, the patterns, which are often based on 20, 40-year cycles, some on 100-year cycles of what's happened in the cosmos. It literally tells you every single week what to expect in the week ahead, literally based on the moon, stars, everything. So that resource, Llewellyn's Daily Planetary Guide, when y'all see these even like imposters who are just trying to be on social media saying, I see in your moon, book a card reading with me or whatever, I'm not downplaying the practices themselves. I'm downplaying it just like I might downplay a pastor who's out there preaching and then over here, and he's got 5 different women that he's sleeping with besides his wife. It's the same type of mentality of somebody trying to cash in on something that they might not be passionate about. That's why I'm saying those people, they're simply just regurgitating what they read that week for Llewellyn's. So I put it out there as that's also been a valuable tool for me. And there's also ways beyond that. If you don't want to hire someone or you don't know somebody like Cortney does, you don't have to go hire an astrologer. Even if you say, well, I can't afford a coach, you can go buy this book and it literally lays out, hey, this is probably what's favorable this week. Hey, on Thursday and Friday with this happening into this planet, tensions might be high. Maybe hold off on contract. Like it literally tells you this.
Yeah. So there's another, so Maggie Kitch, Kitch. So she's my astrologer and you can find her on Instagram, but she put together with a feng shui and a psychologist, she put together a 2024 planner because I love my paper calendars. And she put together this planner and they have sat down and gone through the entire 2024 calendar. And it is the lunar cycle. You're going to need one. I know you are.
I'm like, okay.
But it's like during this week, you know, we have high energy. So these are the exercises you need to be doing. These are, you know, do these things. You should be planning. You should be writing. You should be brainstorming. And then there's feng shui. And then there's mind, soul, body stuff. And then in the next week, it's like, you need to rest. You need to recover. Go get a massage. Take a low energy yoga class. And they've got my whole year planned out.
You're like, I'm good.
So here's my business. Let's just plug in the hole.
Yes.
So I'm really excited for that.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for always being willing to share resources. Audience, I know we've given a lot of resources, so we are going to take delicate time to make sure that we have put in the show notes not only Cortney's website and where you can find her. The final thing is to give an official welcome that Cortney is actually one of our very first, she is our very first affiliate network partner at Accredited. We love what she's doing so much in healthcare, and also just from me and my sister having relationship with her over the years, professionally, personally, etc., is she not only was willing to test things out and now has implemented and had great success. We want to make sure that we always give back and appreciate those who have done those things. So the link you're going to get below, we are actually running a promotion, and our program is specifically for current or those who have left their fields, but it is for teachers and nurses mainly. Doctors and principals can also tap in, right? But it's for K-12 education. Yes, it's K-12 education and also healthcare. So you'll see that reflected on the sales page. It doesn't mean that if you randomly hear this and you want to check it out, you can't. I'm just letting y'all know that is our target market, and that's who we have a heart for as far as me and my sister's experiences and how we're running Educator Aid. But that is going to be available for a time period, and we have a promotional price, and you're getting a lot of value. But you want to use that link below because it'll be Cortney's link, and she has been instrumental in helping us develop that program. And we are really, really excited to fully launch it finally, after just working out kinks and making sure we were in alignment, right? It's going back to everything we just talked about. There's so many ways and tools to help get you organized, both emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of these things as a business owner, but also don't ever discount listening to that gut instinct. And that's the ebb and flow, right? She spoke about a program that she said, well, I tried this over here, didn't take. Same with us, right? It's the same with any endeavor. I think it's really important not to hold things too precious. I have a mentor that always says that, and that's one of the biggest things in entrepreneurship is to know stuff is going to pivot, stuff is going to change. And just because Cortney might have thought, oh, this is exactly what I would have needed, this is what I wanted, she spent a lot of time asking her target audience, did this actually meet what you needed? Is this actually what you want? Did it help? And so we hope to find the same thing. So make sure you take advantage of the link below. Check out the Edupreneur Vision Accelerator program, because over time, we want people to be able to access that and have this information at a very affordable price, and especially to our teachers and nurses in healthcare. Is there anything else? Again, we're going to link your direct website, especially if you are like, I've never heard of her role. I just want to learn more about it. Go to her website. Go to her website and see, more about her and where she's at in her journey. Anything else that you have coming or in the works? I just want to put that out there and also express my gratitude publicly, because I'm just really excited that you're part of our network in some way, selfishly, because I love you.
I love you too. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to collaborate. It has been amazing the last couple of years working with you
Yes.
and Kara, and I just like soul sisters.
Thank you. Exactly. I can't speak enough to that too in my journey, as much as people might see me talk about online, like cautionary stuff. I am who I am. And I think any of us would say, whether it's Cortney or myself or any entrepreneur, we're not self-made. we have so many incredible people who have helped us, who support us, incredible people who give us criticism, even if we don't want to hear it, and make us better. So thank you all for being here. Please check out the resources. Please make sure that you connect with and follow Cortney. Cortney, what's your Instagram handle? Or do you want people to follow you there, or no? Okay. What's your
Courtney
Instagram?
Hartman, but it's Courtneo 318. My middle name is Naomi, so think of Cortney Naomi. So Courtneo 318.
CORTNAO
318.
318.
Because my birthday is March 18th.
Look at that.
So there you go.
Oh, thank you
Naomi,
all.
and my birthday's coming up.
So make sure you put that in your calendars. Send her gifts. No, I thank you for being here, Cortney. Thank you, listeners, for kicking off with us. Please continue to let us know what you want, what you need. We are committed to continuing to put out as high level content for free and for affordable as much as possible. And let's continue to get compassionately curious together. Until next time, take care.